Control can vanish even with a will because pensions and joint ownership can bypass it. In England and Wales, many people believe a will gives complete control, but some of your most valuable accounts may never pass under it. That's why knowing what a will actually covers brings real details and less stress for your family. If there's no will, intestacy rules decide who inherits, and the person dealing with the paperwork might not be who you expected. Even with a will, some beneficiary choices sit outside it. A few months ago, one family sat around a kitchen table with a folder of documents and a lot of confidence. They'd signed a will, so everyone assumed the state would follow it neatly. Then a call came in at a pension, and suddenly the will was not the deciding document for that pot. I remember thinking how normal that confidence is right up until it meets the small print. So what does the will actually do in England and Wales? Will is your written set of instructions for your estate, mainly for assets in your sole name. It appoints an executor, the person who applies for authority to deal with the estate and carries out your wishes. It can name beneficiaries and it can set up a trust in certain situations. It can also record who you want to act as guardians for children, which is often the part families care most about. Don't confuse the will with a magic remote control. What people expect is the will controls everything. What the law does is split your assets into different routes. Some assets pass under your will, some pass by the way they're owned, some pass by nominations you've made directly with the provider. If there's no valid will, intestacy is the default set of rules that decides who can inherit and who can deal with the paperwork, which may not follow your wishes at all. That can be fine for some families and completely wrong for others. Even where the people are broadly right, the process can still be slower and more stressful than it needed to be. Here's a simple dividing line to hold in your head. Your will usually governs what you own in your sole name and what is payable to your estate. Jointly owned assets can pass automatically to the surviving owner, depending on how they are held. Pensions and some life policies often rely on nominations or provider discretion rather than the wording in your will. If you died this weekend, which of your assets would actually follow your will? Most people only find out when someone is already trying to sort their estate. So what should you focus on first? First is people and roles. When you marry, separate or have a child, confirm whether the executor you chose still makes sense. Also confirm whether your guardian choices still fit real life. A common mistake is picking an executor because it feels polite at the time, not because they can handle forms, deadlines and family dynamics. Another is naming guardians in conversation but not in the will, so there's no clear written instruction. Small decisions now prevent big confusion later. An improvement looks a bit like this. The executor knows that they've been chosen, they understand roughly what the job involves, and your guardian's choice is written down in a way a professional can rely on. One couple named a sibling as guardian, then moved abroad and never updated it. Years later, the family were all trying to work out what the parents would have wanted, and they were doing it under pressure. If you last spoke to your executor or guardians after a family change, write down what's changed, then confirm they're still willing and able to act. This often catches people out because we often assume one conversation or a polite nod is enough. What to notice is simple. If your chosen executor or guardian hasn't seen your wishes in writing, there's a gap. Secondly, assets and documents. When you buy a home or you remortgage, confirm how the property is owned because that can decide whether it passes under the will or outside it. People often assume joint always means the same outcome, but the legal form of ownership matters. Then look at your bank accounts, pensions and any policies. Verify whether there are beneficiary nominations in place and whether they still match your wishes. A common mistake is updating the will after a life change but leaving old nominations pointing somewhere else. This is where organised families get surprised. They did the will, they filed the documents, but one account, one nomination or one ownership detail is still telling a different story. Here's a useful way to think about it. Your will is one document, your estate is the whole set of routes your assets take, and then when these routes disagree, your executor is left stitching it together. The reason this matters is simple. Small gaps now can mean bigger delays and confusion for your family later. Fixing one detail at a time means less stress and fewer missteps when it counts. A will is not a magic remote control, it is one part of the instruction system. None of this is legal or tax advice, and details depend on your circumstances. So do speak to a qualified solicitor or will writer if you're unsure. But you can still get a lot of value from understanding the lanes your assets. Quiet preparation is kinder than urgent decisions later.